Hey everyone, we have a very special guest today. But before we get there, please remember to hit the like, share, download, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you listen. This will allow us to continue to bring you the great content and amazing guests you have come to expect. Now, let's get to the show. Today's guest has arguably done more for the world of Jiu-Jitsu than almost any other person. Firstly, by spreading his knowledge of the art here in the United States, and then by creating the biggest organization in MMA, the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Listen as he shares his story from growing up under the tutelage of his father Helio and Uncle Carlos, his early days in America, and the incredible story of creating the UFC. Here is ROL Radio with actor, writer, producer, and grandmaster, Rorion Gracie.
Welcome to ROL Radio.
And we're live. Gary, how are you feeling today?
How am I feeling? Well, I felt better, that's for sure. But today we're going to have an awesome conversation with somebody that if you would have told me when I started jiu-jitsu that I would be talking to this person, I would have told you were bananas. But here we are today. But before we get to our guest today, Fuji Sports, we are giving away a gi every month. We have given away 5. All you have to do is go to therolradio.com, take a quick survey. And once you do that, you are automatically entered to win a free gi. And it is a gi of your choosing. They have amazing products. Check them out and take the survey, therolradio.com.
Outstanding. Let's get to the show. Sir, Master Rorion Gracie in the house. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Amazing. Thank you very much for the opportunity, John.
Absolutely.
Great to be here.
Great to have you. And we're going to dig into some important topics. But you know what? Coincidentally, it happened actually last week that I had a privilege to attend a seminar with Royce. And, one of the things that struck me during that seminar as he was speaking and I was listening to his teachings, he said during UFC 1, when he walked into the octagon, people were not watching him. They were watching the art of jiu-jitsu. And even today, when, decades after that event, when people remember or they talk about that event, they don't really talk about him. He was just a vehicle to present the art. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on this? Because many find you as the brains behind the operation. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think?
Well, I think that Royce did exactly that. He went in there to represent, just not himself as a fighter, but what the Gracie family has been doing for many generations now, which is to, defend and uphold the belief that jiu-jitsu is indeed the most effective form of self-defense. So when I volunteered Royce, even though he was going to be the smallest, lightest guy in the tournament, I said, "Oh, sure is." He said, "Oh, okay." And he went in there and did the job. You know what I'm saying? That's what jiu-jitsu was about. Still is about.
Yeah, and I think that's the beautiful thing, because many, as these conversations are unfolding in different academies all around the world, often that topic comes up when student is asked, well, what got you in onto the mat? What got you introduced? Very often they say, well, listen, UFC. I watch Royce in the octagon, and then I got really interested. I got really intrigued with these little guys doing these crazy things. And somehow, submitting and completely overwhelming his opponents, despite the power or the size that they had. Was that the plan originally from the very beginning when you guys were designing UFC? And was that?
Let me tell you that the story started, a couple of decades before that. The UFC was just a culmination of a long time dream, which was to make the world aware of the benefits of the techniques we have in jiu-jitsu. So that was just the tip of the iceberg. But this thing started way, way before. When I first came here in 1969, my ticket was stolen, and I find myself struggling, literally panhandling on the street corners in Hawaii for, of all places, and sleeping in newspapers. And then went back to Brazil and came back to America again. So that ultimately my dream was to share jiu-jitsu with the world. And after 10 years in my garage with hundreds of challenge matches, I said, this is not going to be here. One-on-one is not going to do it. So that's when the idea of creating the UFC came about. And when like I said, when I volunteered Royce to go in there, although he was the lightest and smallest guy in the tournament, he had the technical elements to convey the message, which was Jiu-Jitsu is it, and we're here to stay. And with that, everybody now who practices or get into MMA, as you know, cannot venture in there without some kind of a knowledge of Jiu-Jitsu. You can call it whatever you want, but Jiu-Jitsu is the spine of the whole, fighting scene of today. So I'm extremely happy.
Well, first of all, I'm glad you guys did, because I would be unemployed and I don't know. I'm glad you guys did what you guys did.
Yes.
But listen, interesting, you mentioned that story about your ticket being stolen at the very beginning of that entire journey here in the United States. And actually, I didn't know that story until very recently. So first of all, are you telling me if your ticket was not stolen, that things would go completely different way and now I would be doing something else? Because some might view it that way. What happened with that ticket?
What happens is this. It's not that the ticket was stolen. What happened is more profound than that. The thing is, all bad things that happen in our lives are ultimately for our benefit. Life doesn't happen to you. Life happens for you. So the ups and downs that we come across in our lives, they are meant to kind of put you in a spot so that you can make the decision, and ultimately will lead you to a bigger and bigger possibilities. As a reminder that everybody has problems, like, me too, and all of us do have. But what I'm telling you and your audience is that every time there's something very serious, some very heavy duty stuff that happens in your life, if you look properly, you'll find amazing opportunities in there. I was 17 years old. I had started teaching Jiu-Jitsu a couple of years prior to that. I saved enough money and I decided to come to California on vacation. That's December 1969. And I bought the cheapest ticket I could. And I decided to stay at the YMCA in Hollywood, like a little hostel kind of thing, just stay there to save money. And for security reasons, did not want to leave my cash and my return ticket in my room at the Y. So I asked the receptionist to keep the money and the return ticket on the safe of the company, which he did. A week later, when I went back to get some pocket change for my daily expenses, I find out that the receptionist fled the scene, took my ticket and my cash. So it was gone. It was stolen. So I called the manager. He said, I'm very sorry. I'm going to give you a couple of bucks to buy a sandwich, but I'm not buying you a new ticket to Brazil. Called the airline company and discussed that with them. Now, in 1969, unlike today, you don't go on the computer and print a new ticket on the spot. If you have the piece of paper, you travel. If you don't have the piece of paper, you won't travel. So the airline told me that's going to take at least 6 months to make sure nobody used my ticket before they could print me a new one. In order not to worry my parents in Brazil, I called the old man and said, Dad, guess what? I came here to spend a month, but I love America. I'm having a great time, having fun every day. So I'm not going to be here for only a month. I'm going to be here for at least 6 months. Is everything okay? So everything is amazing. Okay, well, have fun. Click. I didn't want to give the old man a heart attack 10,000 miles away.
So he had no clue what really happened.
He had absolutely no clue what happened. And like I understood at the time, if I fall inside a hole, I have to figure out a way to get out of the hole on my own. Again, I learned very early on in my life that those kind of things happen. You have to deal with that. Much like in a jiu-jitsu match, if you're sparring with someone, the guy's trying to choke you or catch you on an unlock or submit you, you just have to kind of fend him off for a little bit until things turn around. You can't just panic. So, that's why I find myself in that situation. I happen to know the guy, a week before I had sparred with the judo instructor at the YMCA. And even though I was very young, I was able to submit the guy a couple of times. They became friends of mine. So as soon as I find out I had no money, I was completely lost. I came to him, which was one of the few people I knew at the time, said, I'm looking for work. So he talked to a friend of his who owned a restaurant called White Castle, making the mini burgers. Mm-hmm. And I got a job at White Castle, flipping hamburgers and stuff like that. And at White Castle, I made some friends and eventually left the YMCA to live with one of my friends. And the trip started getting more comfortable. I saw Jimi Hendrix in concert a couple of times. Now I'm feeling more at ease because I'm hanging out with the kids, going to the beach, and just kind of getting a little more, California style, as you may say. Anyway, so I'm having kind of enjoying the trip. And when 6 months came up, my friend said, honey, we're here so close. You have to go visit Hawaii. You can't just go to Brazil right now. Hawaii is really this and that and in paradise. So he talked me into it. I had saved a little money working in the restaurant, so I decided to buy a ticket and went to Hawaii. First week was amazing. And then I started running out of money. Couldn't get work because I didn't have a social security card. So I find myself, eventually got a job at a construction company, but the guy would pay only every couple of weeks. And he had just paid everybody on that week when I started. So I had to wait 2 weeks. So the little tiny bit of money I had, I left the hotel so I wouldn't spend too much money. And I started sleeping on a newspaper on the sidewalk. It got to a point I just had no money to eat at all, zero. And Brazil had just won the World Cup, by the way, at that time. I don't want to, rub that in or anything like that. But I ran into that's 1970, summer in Hawaii. So I ran into a guy from Colombia. So, oh, Brazilian, Pelé, the soccer player. So he kind of thought I was friends with Pelé or whatever he thought. Anyways, we started hanging out, both of us, flat broke, long-haired, bell bottoms, cowboy boots, nothing to do with the Hawaiian look, And then we were going in a street corner and waiting for people to walk by so we could ask for a spare change. But our figures, our characters would be intimidating the donors. People walk by and say, look, those two guys, like, oh my God, walk away from them. Sure. And I said to the guy, this is not working. So I told my friend, stay here on this side of the street. I'm going across the street. And this tourist will pile up on this side. And as we're going across the street to go towards the beach, I would speed up my step a little bit. And my friend would say, hey, spare change, please, spare change. I get a penny out of my pocket, give it to the guy, say, guys, let's give this poor guy some money. It could be any one of us. So I'm walking around the hustle. Yeah, I have to do it. We're going to do it. I'm not stealing money. I'm just asking for a spare change. Anyways, we got to do it enough time so I can buy some bread and cheese so I can eat and that kind of thing. In other words, it was kind of, it's not fortunate, not for long, but just enough to make me realize that no matter what, you can find a way to make it work. Eventually, I went back to work the following week. The guy paid, everything was fine. I went back to Brazil. After 1 year in America, went to, stay there for a couple of years. And all I could think about was coming back to the States. I liked the idea, number one, of the independence of doing whatever I want at 18 years old. I own my life. Number two, the fact that I was able to survive for a year in another country, which is not my, speaking language or anything like that, made some friends, and things worked out gave me a lot of confidence, let's put it this way. So after 2 years, I came back to the States in 1972, stayed 3 months here, visited some friends, went back to Brazil, went to law school in Brazil, graduated law school. I never practiced law. You can see I'd rather have the belt around my waist instead of on my neck. So I remember after law school in 1978, then I came back with the objective of sharing Jiu-Jitsu with the rest of the world. I told myself, I'm going to teach this stuff to the world because I've seen nobody did the same kind of martial art we did. My family's been doing this for 100 years, as you know.
So hold on. I got a few questions before we go further, because
please.
First of all, when you go back to Brazil, does your dad know what really happened? Do you ever tell him?
Oh yeah, of course. When I went back to Brazil and I told him the story, he freaked out. You should have told me that. What are you doing? Sleeping on the streets and this and that, And I said, Dad, it's okay. We're back here sitting on the couch with your mom. Everything is good. Okay, fine. And so it was, he kind of freaked out, but he was okay because I'm ultimately back. If the situation got out of hand, I would call him. But, a little tightness is good, teaches you.
Before you went back to Brazil, do you do any jiu-jitsu at this point? Or this is purely kind of, you're trying to find your way and stay in the U.S. and make friends, make these connections?
Yeah, I did not train or teach jiu-jitsu. I find myself in a couple of scuffles, minor stuff, but not that I got into teaching anybody doing this. I had to use jiu-jitsu to defend myself a couple of times. And then with some friends playing in the backyard, that just kind of surprising the heck out of everybody that I had, the knowledge to subdue everybody. And that's how I use jiu-jitsu. But I wasn't teaching. I didn't have a look for an opportunity to teach anything like that. No. But I did use it on the street a couple of times.
How is your English at that point? Is this the first time you come to U.S. at this point?
It's the first time. It's like when you go to school here, high school, and learn Spanish. It's that kind of, you don't really know. You get there, you get completely lost and confused. But I'm not stupid, you know what I'm saying? People here repeat, and I kind of got into that, At the time, made a couple of girlfriends here and there. I told them to be very picky with my English, correct everything, and that's a good way to learn.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking these questions is because, life unfolds different for everybody, and often we find these reasonings and these obstacles as a way to not drive towards our goals. This is too hard, these are the obstacles, versus what you're talking about. I find a way. I'm going to hustle. No matter what it takes, I need to figure it out. Language, not a problem. Sleeping on the street is not a problem. I don't have money. I will figure it out. And there's a very strong mindset to drive forward, to really not only survive, forget about surviving, but this is really to achieve the goal that you set for yourself.
Right. Yes. I think here's the deal. That's exactly the point. Everybody has that. We all have that. What we need is a motivation to do that. Mm-hmm. In my case, literally, it was survive. I have no money to eat. What am I going to do? Roll up in a corner and just stay there and get stuck on it? No, I'm not going to do that. Mm-hmm. I don't mind sleeping on the sidewalk. If I have to do it, that's what I'm going to do. But I always saw myself as not as a guy who's no chance in life and I'm destitute. I mean, I'm dead. No. I said, this is a temporary situation. I'm temporarily out of funds. I'm going to make this thing happen. Because I come from a background that the idea of giving up is just, it doesn't fit. It doesn't, you can't just give up. You got to do what you got to do.
Right.
You know,
so this is instilled in you by your father and your uncles at this point, right?
Yes.
Whether you know it or not.
The jiu-jitsu, you're sparring there. I don't want to go to the academy today because, there's a guy there who's big and strong, who's giving me a hard time. Well, guess what? We're going to the academy because the only way you're going to succeed against that guy one day is if you don't give up right now. Let's work it. I say, my private class, what kind of move does he do? You get you in a headlock? Oh, let me get you in a headlock. In other words, there's that support to strengthen you so that you can one day stand on your own feet. Because running away doesn't cut it. You're ultimately going to have to face the battles anyway. Like Bob Marley said, he who runs and fights, who he fights and run away will live to fight another day. So we have, all of us have to deal with our demons and face the hardships and the confrontations and the difficulties that life will present to us. And that's what we talked about in the very beginning. Everybody's going to have hard time. There's no way around it. The way if you run away from the hard time, there's another one coming. But if you jump on it, how do I deal with this? Not only you're going to find a way to deal with that, but more importantly, it will give you the confidence to say, hey, you know what? I can beat this hardship. I can beat the next one. I can just beat anyone. Bring them all. That's the idea. That's the idea.
Yeah, and it's very similar to the mindset of jiu-jitsu, continuous troubleshooting and figuring out what is going on. I mean, if you give up, you get submitted. That period, done. It's over. Go home, right? But if you continue resolving these problems one by one and troubleshooting the situation, now there is an opportunity, and that's all it is. It's an opportunity. The question is, will you take advantage?
Exactly. So when you can apply your jiu-jitsu on your daily life, you're getting the benefits of jiu-jitsu that you're meant to, not just sparring and submitting someone, but be able to spar and submit the difficulties of life.
Yeah, that's what they would call jiu-jitsu lifestyle, right?
It's
not the surfing, It's not the beach. Is that? Listen, so you go back to Brazil, you come back to US, and then at which point the idea of UFC gets in your mind, right? So what year is this when you come back to
78?
78. So that's still over a decade before this gets off the ground, years. Right?
Oh yeah, easy. At least 15, 20 years almost.
Yeah.
So I came back in 78, and I first stayed with a friend of mine that I met on the previous trip, whose mother was an actress. So the lady would go to work in the studios and I would be home alone. But instead of watching TV all day, I am washing the windows, I am cleaning the bathrooms, I am cutting the grass, I am cooking dinner, doing anything and everything I could to show appreciation for the fact that they let me stay there. Eventually, I started looking for work. Again, no jiu-jitsu school, nothing like that. She said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I won't do anything. And she said, well, do you want to clean people's homes? I said, of course. So she started calling her friends, everybody in the movie business. Rorion does great cleaning work. Oh, send him over here, send him over here, send him over here. And I'm going to everybody's house to clean up, wash windows and bathrooms and everything, doing that kind of stuff. Eventually, I landed on the house of a woman whose husband was the assistant director on the TV show Starsky and Hutch. The two cops.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
One of my favorites growing up.
There you go. So that's 40 years ago. The lady sees me 40 years younger, say, hey, you're a good looking guy. How come you're not in the movie business? I said, that's right. How come I'm not in the movie business? She said, why don't you take some pictures? My husband will take you to a casting office and you start doing extra work. I said, I love it. Hung up my broom, took some pictures. The guy took me to Central Casting and I started doing crosses on the background. Fantasy Island, Hill Street Blues, Heart to Heart, Quincy, Simon and Simon, Rock 45. All those shows, I'm on the background running around. Okay. That's, in fact, I was working as an extra one day when director Dick Donner, who was directing Lethal Weapon, said, hey, what's the best kind of fight? Why is Mel Gibson a Lethal Weapon? And a guy had seen a fight that I had with a kickboxing champ by the name of Ralph Alegria, whom I choked in a minute and a half. A production assistant saw that fight, say, hey, the best kind of fighting there is Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. The only guy in the country who teaches it is one of our extras. So Dick Donner hired me to teach Mel Gibson and Gary Busey. so that they could do the fight scene on Lethal Weapon 1 when the car hits the fire hydrant, and Gary Busey and Lethal and Mel Gibson are doing the fights, and Mel Gibson catches him on a triangle.
Yep.
That's because I was behind the scene teaching those guys. Had Dan Severn watched that movie, he might be prepared to deal with the horses triangle on UFC 4. But didn't pay attention. Anyways, so I work as an extra. I left the lady's house as soon as I started working in the movies. I left the lady's house, rented a house with some friends in Hermosa Beach, California, and put some mats in my garage. And every person I met, no matter where I was, I invited for a free class. Just so happens that I'm an amazing teacher. People come for the first class, gets hooked immediately, if not sooner. And I say, hey, bring a friend, I'll get you another free class. Bring 10 friends, I'll get you 10 free class. There's marketing for you right there.
Yeah, he's
so
hustling.
the people start bringing their friends for classes. And I'm teaching everybody free classes and working on the movies 5 days a week and teaching class on the weekends on my house. The busier I got with more and more classes, I kept cutting down the work on the movies. I'm ultimately an actor on the stage of life, if you know what I mean. So I'm teaching classes, more and more and more and more. And it didn't take long until some of those students would say, "Hold on, my karate instructor, or kung fu, or taekwondo, they're getting jealous that I'm down training jiu-jitsu with you. They want to challenge you to a fight. They think karate or kung fu or taekwondo is much better than jiu-jitsu.
Of course
Would you accept that? Would you accept that?" I said, "Of course, bring him in." So the guy would bring his martial arts instructor to fight me, and I'll tell my students, "Hey guys, Wednesday night, 8 o'clock, a karate guy is coming." And the students will pile up on the garage to see the fights because everybody wants to hear your fight.
Oh, so this is in your garage, actually.
In my garage, yes. For 10 years, I had hundreds of challenge matches and bringing people. It got to a point that it just wouldn't fit. People screaming outside. It was wild. From there, 10 years later, I'm teaching 630 private classes out of my garage so that you have an idea. If people were not wearing white, the neighborhood would probably think that we're dealing drugs because every half an hour there was somebody coming into my door to have a private class. You know what I'm saying? $10 a pop.
What did your neighbors think?
Yeah, that's what
That's what I'm saying. The neighborhood, a lot of the neighbors were students too. So the thing kind of mellowed out because of the kids and adults and everybody. Anyways, it's a very positive thing, as you know. Jiu-Jitsu come in, you get hooked, you can't enough. You got to tell your friends, you got to tell. It's amazing, life-changing. So these guys are coming to the house to have classes. And like I said, once in a while, there was a challenge match all the time. People would know, hold on, I'm bringing someone tonight. Great. It was like that. Got to a point, it's just kind of another one. And because Jiu-Jitsu is indeed the most effective form of self-defense, it's not my fault. Somebody had to be number one. I just happened to be it.
Right place,
right as we say in Brazil, in a blind man's land, he who has one eye is king. So those guys back in the 80s and early 90s, nobody knew anything about jiu-jitsu. So for the karate guy to come in, I defend myself, get into a clinch, take the guy to the ground lovingly. I don't have to beat anybody to a pulp. Squeeze the guy a little bit, twist his neck a little bit. He taps out, no blood, no hurt, no nothing. Usually would go, "I want to do it again." I say, "Okay, we'll do it again and again and again." They go, "Oh my God, this stuff is amazing. Can I learn?" I said, "Sure, my friend, sign up." So most of the guys who came in to beat me up walked out of there, good friends of mine, bragging about jiu-jitsu. That's it. So that's how the West was won. Little by little, one person at a time. Like I said, after 10 years in my garage, we opened up a school nearby. The challenge matches kept happening. And one day it dawned on me that this is not going to end. 250 million people, it's not going to end. That's when, one of my friends, Art David, the student of mine, said, "Hey, Harden, we got to make this thing to the world. Everybody wants to see there's more and more people. It wouldn't fit in the academy anymore." So I said, "Why don't we go television?" So that's when the idea of the UFC came about. The long version of their story, but that's about it.
So what year is this? The idea of UFC?
92.
92.
We start chewing on that. So students would come around and this and that.
So it took you about a year to get from the idea footprint or blueprint to the actual execution.
Yeah. I mean, there was several challenges. Every time there was a challenge match, people would say, "Oh my gosh, everybody has to see." There was a kind of, the world needs to see this. And I'm thinking, this is going to be my vehicle to reach the masses. It's going to be this. So that's got to be to television.
Yeah. So, and so you have this idea, and then, I mean, it was a big production. UFC 1 wasn't just something that was thrown together. It was a major production, a major arena.
Especially when you're from Brazil, don't know how to speak English.
Yeah. So I know there was a third partner, and it was John, right? Is he the one that really got the ball rolling as far as the production is concerned?
No. What happened? No, first was Art. Art was a student of mine. Joe Milius was a student of mine. Those guys are all students.
Talking about, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So we start having the idea. It was like, I sat down with Art, said, what do we need to do? We start looking, we came up with the idea of the concept of the show. I specifically did not want a boxing ring,
right?
Because I've been in enough fights and seen enough fights. When the guy's getting beat up, he slips between the ropes and get out. I said, no, we can't do that. We got to make something they can't run away. So talk to John Milius. I mean, he kind of discussed the concept that he used on Conan, the little, stuff for the guys fighting on the arena kind of thing, the gladiator.
Right, in a pit, right?
In a pit, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember talking to John Milius one time on the lot at Sony Studios. He had his office in there. And John is saying, oh, we're going to make this a huge thing, a huge production. We have the guys, the fighters, come in on chariots with black horses and white horses and run around. You know what I'm saying? And the trumpets, the guys all dressed up with that Roman togas. You know what I'm saying? The white outfit with the trumpet and stuff like that on the top is going to be great. And said, calm down, John, calm down. But the idea was to have horses running around the arena, the whole very gladiator stuff. But ultimately, we put together a little video clip of different fights, called a whole bunch of TV stations. We called ESPN and HBO and Showtime, all of them. No, too crazy. No, too crazy. And ultimately, we got in touch with Semaphore Entertainment, Bob Marowitz in New York. And he said, interesting. Come talk about this. So we picked up a clip, which I still have the clip today. Got the clip, went to New York and showed the people in his office. And as he's watching there, it was very interesting because we had a glass mirror, a glass wall behind us on the conference room, and we're watching that on TV. And before you know it, there's a whole bunch of people in the office, and the windows outside looking.
They're just heads.
They're just heads, and they're going to say, they look back and they saw that and said, gosh, this is it. People are going to love this stuff. And we closed the deal. And they said, if you produce the live show, we'll put it on TV on pay-per-view. I said, great. And we're going to be partners on the show, half and half. I said, I love it. So Art and I came back, said, now we have to raise the money for the show. Where are we going to go? We wrote a business plan. I brought in, I remember that, 93 students of the academy. One day, fill up the room, the group classes room. Everybody sitting on there. We hand out business plans to everyone. Campbell McLaren, who worked for Marowitz at the time, was a director of programming, came in from New York to explain what pay-per-view was about. I mean, that day was completely different than it is today, guys. A whole different world. Yeah. It was like 40,000 or 80,000 pay-per-view homes, whatever it was. Anyway, so he said, explained the whole thing, how it was, and Art was there to schmooze with everybody, and I'm explaining what the whole deal is about. We described it as Mortal Kombat for real. You remember the show Mortal Kombat?
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be Mortal Kombat for real. People from different styles doing anything they want, whatever they want. Oh, my gosh, is that possible? Yeah, we're going to do that happen. Anyways, on that night, we raised the money we wanted to produce the show, the live show. So now we knew that if we produce a live show, Semaphore, Bob Marowitz are going to make the real stuff on TV. So now we have something really exciting. For us, we brought John Milius in as a creative director to lend credibility to the show. Because if John Milius is involved, like, whoa, this is serious business. And
sure people don't know who John is. Check him out. I mean, he made some huge movies and wrote some great screenplays.
He wrote Apocalypse Now and wrote the dialogue for Sean Connery on The Hunt for Red October, Red Dawn. The guy is crazy, Jeremiah Johnson. The guy's a genius, Rome and stuff like that. So the guy's, way beyond the Call of Duty. He's guys, and a huge fan, you know what I'm saying? Trained Jiu-Jitsu with me, and his sons were students. So anyways. So we drawn around and we made a really nice package and sold the idea. Semaphore liked it. And before you know it, we're in Denver, Colorado. Why we chose Denver? There were 6 states at the time that allowed no holds barred. I mean, bare knuckle fighting. Everybody else was against because of the boxing commission. But those states didn't have it. They would forbid that. So I chose Denver because it was centrally located. People could come from the East Coast as well as the West Coast, make it easier for everyone. And first happened November 12th. Royce goes in there, puts on a show, does the deed, and after the very first event, in which he didn't throw one punch.
Yeah.
Royce didn't get one. Nice, very. Look at him walking like a little angel. People felt sorry for Royce. Take the kid out of there. Look at those monsters and stuff like that. After the first show, the U.S. Army calls me up. Mr. Gracie, we saw the little guy beat the big guy. We need to learn this. And asked me to create a program for the Army, which I did. And for the last 28 or 29 years, has been the official hand-to-hand combative program for the U.S. Army. Now the FBI, the Secret Service, the DEA, Border Patrol, every major law enforcement agency in the country has embraced the idea. Again, very happy with the outcome of this stuff.
Well, I mean, beyond even that, I mean, there's millions of people around the world training jiu-jitsu fundamentally because of that one event, right? I mean, it really was a pivot point in martial arts as it exists today, right?
Yeah.
How did you guys pick the fighters? So first, talk to us about the conversation with Hoist. Like, who picks Hoist? Is it you? Is it your dad? Is it Hoist? Like,
it's me. It's me.
We know why, but how did that conversation go down?
Well,
hey, Hoist,
I had gone to Brazil. I had gone to Brazil before, a few years before, and with three of my kids, a little 5 or 6 years old or whatever it is, and the younger one there too. So in Brazil, we ran into Royce, of course. He lived down there, other brothers and so forth. And Royce was very kind, very gentle with the kids, and they're playing with the kids, very playful. And when we came back, my wife said, "Holly, why don't you bring Royce, to spend some time with us here? He's such a good with the kids. It would be good for him to get to know America." Royce is 17 years old at the time. So I talked to my dad and said, "Dad, you know what? Why don't we bring each one of my brothers, the younger ones, and I'm the oldest of 9. Why don't you bring each one of them to spend 6 months with me so that they can be here, speak a little English, learn around, go to school for a semester, whatever." "Oh, great, do that." So Royce, we brought him in first because she had a good experience with him back in Brazil. So we brought Royce in, and when the 6 months were up, I said, "Oh, I don't want to go back. I don't want to stay here. Let me stay." I said, "Okay, fine, Royce, you stay." So Royce kept staying with us, but he came basically to be a babysitter for my children. That was Royce's definition at the time. Going to,
he's the nanny,
just barely finished high school in Brazil.
Nanny.
Yeah, pretty tough nanny indeed. So he'd be babysitting my kids most of the time. And when I started working in the movies and doing this, start teaching class, I would go to work in the movies one day, and Royce would sub for me on the classes. So he was kind of at 17 years old. That was it. So after 10 years, when this whole thing of the UFC came about, he was 27 years old. I said, "Well, UFC is going to happen." I said, "Okay, great." And I'm thinking, I'm going to put Royce in there. That's it. Everybody, "Oh my gosh, you got to put Rickson because he's bigger, he's heavy, he's stronger, he can do this." There's no doubt in my mind that Rickson would just make it happen. No, there's no doubt. But Rickson winning, like, of course, no wonder. Look at him. The Rhino goes in there and destroys anybody and everybody. So I felt that Royce would be a better example of what technique can do because of his less impressive stature. How's that? So that's was the reason I chose. Art said, "No, you're going to put Royce." I said, "Yes, of course I want to put Royce. No reason why not." And I put him in there, and Royce did the job. It was great.
So
as far as the other fighters,
as far as the other fighters,
I was going to say, we put ads in martial arts magazines all over the world. We send letters. We started looking for everybody we could. Spent a few months doing that. And people would send their qualifications. And we always tried to get the biggest, the meanest, the toughest, the ugliest guys, highest qualified we could. And the result was that,
How many did you get total? How many entries did you get?
We probably get a few dozen entries.
Okay, so
not a ton.
Not a ton.
Not a ton. So, following up, we got more. And every time there was more and more and more. It got to a point where we're getting hundreds of people.
Yeah, I bet by 4 you had a lot.
Yeah, the year before it was crazy.
So how do you make the selection? You look at the list and you say, this guy can strike. Was the variety important to you, that they were from different arts?
We want to have different styles. That's exactly the point. We have different styles. So the names would be different names of martial arts because the idea was a comparison of styles of martial art. That was the motivation thing. Karate, Kung Fu, Taekwondo, one of each style. And of course, within that, if we have 3 karate guys, I would get the guy who's highest ranked. I would get the guy who's bigger and heavier and stronger, that kind of thing. I'll try to get the best of all. But it was different styles, yes, what we're looking for at the time.
Who comes up with the rules?
I comes up. I'm the director, the fighting director of the event. And the rules are very simple. No biting, no eye gouging, that's it.
Yeah.
But if you bit or if you eye gouge your opponent, the fight was not going to stop. You would be fined $1,000, and the money would go to the person who got hurt.
Oh,
I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
So that was the rule. So in other words, if you punch someone, if you eye gouge the guy, okay, the fight is over, you're disqualified. No, it's a street fight. If you eye gouge the guy, knowing that you should not do that, because there's a code of honor between fighters. You know that. You know what I'm saying? You guys, some karate guys say, well, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to kick him on the balls, I'm going to kick him on the groin. I say, if that's your move, do that. But don't tell me that you need to bite someone or eye gouge someone. You don't need to. If that's your last resort, that's not for you. So, but sometimes, only one time, one guy bit the other one, and we actually find the guy and give the money to the opponent. It was the only time it happened. Now, people getting punched and kicked on the groin, that's just part of life. If you're a fighter, you got to protect yourself. But the idea of biting, it goes beyond the code of honor, in my opinion. So those are the two restrictions. They are not rules, they're restrictions. Other than that, no point, no time limit, no weight class, nothing. Everything goes. And that's why the cage was important, so the guys couldn't run away.
They couldn't run away, yeah. At which point do you share all of this with your dad?
Yes, I kept the old man in the mix of the whole thing, always.
So he was included.
And he loved the idea. The old man was like, yes.
Oh, I bet. That's what I'm asking. He had to be stoked about this, right? Because, I mean, his entire existence kind of he was surrounded, but he lived it, right? Often many people find him as the one who kind of got this off the ground, and you took it to the next level, especially in this here in the US, right? So what is his first thought?
Well, first of all, he loves every second of it, you know what I'm saying? And then he, like I said, during the first UFC, in the very end, I pay a little homage to the old man, give him a plaque and stuff like that, calling him the first Ultimate Fighter. And the old man was thrilled, you know what I'm saying? And have that kind of thing, the whole world now watching that and hoist, crown the whole thing by winning the tournament. It was really, really cool. The old man loved everything. He'll be here, come back and forth. He likes to come and see the action, the training, participate and giving tips to this and that. And just, it's his life. He was, he's running through his veins the whole time.
Who comes up with the idea of the walkouts? So, all of you guys, your entire family. I don't even know how many people were in that to tell because camera focuses away. But there was this train of Gracie family going out towards the octagon, right? Who comes up with that?
The Gracie train, as we call it, I guess. Yeah. So what happens is this: everybody's in the locker room, right? Everybody's there, talking, psyching up for the whole fight, and relax, breathing, meditating, whatever. So it's time to go. If we were to walk like this next to each other, it wouldn't fit. So to go to the crowd, it automatically lined up, put the horse in the middle and just go. It was a natural, I guess, evolution of the thing and kind of stuck. And after that, they kept doing this. So many Gracies, who you're going to put, and just kind of fit like that between the crowd better.
How many people were in the locker room? I'm curious.
I don't know, maybe a dozen people, whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
Can't keep all the brothers out, they're gonna. There's always another one.
Protest.
What was the best part behind this entire idea of this entire event? I mean, obviously the goal is accomplished. Like there was no question about this pivot point in the martial arts history, what we know today as jiu-jitsu and mixed martial arts. No question about any of this. But for you personally, what was the best part of all of this entire project, of this entire experience?
As I look back now, at what I am today, like you said, jiu-jitsu getting the popularity it deserves and all that kind of stuff, it was a natural consequence, and of course that is benefits. But as I see now, with my philosophical ways of thinking, is that event helped to build, number one, credibility to the Gracie name, right? They helped build that. And it served to me as a platform to do what I think I was meant to do besides teaching jiu-jitsu, was to share the concepts of a healthy living through the Gracie diet. Mm-hmm. Because if now, Rorion Gracie, because I told the world, I remember telling the students of my garage in 1978 that I was going to change the world. And the guy said, Jorge, you sounded crazy, but there was something about the way you said it that was just there. And eventually, 40 years later, we literally, like you said, changed the world of martial arts. So now I'm in a position to say, guys, if I tell you that the Gracie diet is as important for you and for mankind as jiu-jitsu, if nothing else, you're going to say, who is the son of a gun? Well, maybe, what is he? How come does he feel so confident about this diet stuff? So I think my message to the world was not teaching people how to fight only. There's another piece of it, which is to teach people how to live healthier. And because you look around, there's problems everywhere, health-wise, everybody. The Americans are the most sick people in the world.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
The amount of money that is spent treating people's illnesses is absolutely ridiculous. They're trillions of dollars. I go to the dentist twice a year for a cleanup. I'm going to be 70 years old in 6 months. 70. I never had a cavity in my life. I don't have headaches, stomach aches, heartburn, nothing. Gastritis, also nothing. I'm like a kid. Wake up in the morning, every morning, 6:30 in the morning, jump out of bed full of energy like this all day, every single day. Because of my diet. I have no doubt it's because of my diet. So maybe the idea of creating the UFC was just to create a platform so I can get the credibility to tell the world something just as important. Now, why is it just as important, if not more important? Because some people might like martial arts, some people might like golfing, some people might like swimming, but everybody has to eat. If I can have some kind of impact on people's health by making them aware of the importance of eating healthy through something like this, there it is. It's a life-changing experience, gentlemen. Don't miss the chance to do that. You owe it to yourself because it'll do more for you than anything else. It doesn't do you any good to be able to choke everybody you know, for the fighters, and have a heart attack at 50. You know what I'm saying?
That is true.
That's very true. Very true. What's the basic principles or concepts behind it?
Number one, you can eat anything you want. It's not a restrictive diet. The concept of diet has a connotation, well, you can't do this, you can't do that. No, I eat everything. The trick is how to combine your foods at each meal. How to combine you can eat anything as long as you mix it right. For example, rule number one, we do not mix starches. When you eat bread, you don't eat potato. You can have 5 hamburgers, but no French fries. Or 5 bags of French fries and the patty of the meat, but no bread. So that's number one. Don't mix starches. Number two, we don't mix fat food, something that is prepared with oil or butter or fat, with sweets or sugar. So after you have your potatoes and your steak or fish or chicken and your vegetables, there's no dessert, there's no fruit, there's no glass of orange juice with that. Drink water and it's fine. You don't need the juice. But isn't the fruit good for you? Yes, fruit is very good for you, but not to be mixed with something that is prepared with oil or fat. So that's rule number two. In other words, there's no dessert. And rule number three is that you must space your meals at least 4.5 to 5 hours apart. In other words, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's no snacks. Now, let me remind you that my Uncle Carlos, who spent 65 years studying this concept, was not a doctor. I am not a doctor. So the nutritionist is going to say, wait a minute, you're supposed to eat every 2.5, 3 hours to keep your metabolism, whatever, running a certain way, you know what I'm saying, to avoid the peaks of insulin. No. That's their theory, but it's now being more and more, people are proving it wrong. That's why the intermittent fasting is becoming more popular every day. The doctor from Japan in 2017 won the Nobel Prize on the concept of you fasting, you know what I'm saying? So that's the idea of not eating is the best thing you can do for your health. So we fast, of course, I suggest fasting at least once a month, 24 hours, that's what I do with not drinking water, nothing, just resting for a day. But other than that, space your meals. Don't mix fat with oily foods. I mean, sugar with oily food or with fat, with sugar with fatty or oily foods, and no dessert. And there's no mixing of two different starches.
And the starches,
yeah. But everything is on the book. It's available on Amazon. Get a copy of the book and change your life forever.
Yeah, and we'll put all the show notes in all the notes in the show notes, so all the links. And you're doing some great stuff with the Gracie Week, which I had the opportunity to actually watch today. The first day released yesterday, right? And there's 2 more coming, right?
Yes.
And there's some historical stuff, but you also talk extensively about what this Gracie Diet is, and I think it's a great project that you're putting it on. At which point your dad passes this on? Is it your dad that passes on the information about Gracie Diet to you, or how?
Actually, no. Very good. Back in the 20s, when the Gracies were starting to do Jiu-Jitsu, and first we learned from Mitsui Maeda, the Japanese instructor that came to Brazil. My grandfather helped him get settled in northern Brazil back in 1915 or so, and then he offered to teach Jiu-Jitsu to my then 13-year-old Uncle Carlos as a show of gratitude to my grandfather. So Uncle Carlos trained with Mr. Maeda for a few years, and of course shared with his brothers. And then eventually my father learned as well and developed and fine-tuned the techniques that we now know as Brazilian or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And when my dad and his brother started getting involved in the Jiu-Jitsu scene more intensely, Uncle Carlos, who was the oldest of 5 boys, realized the important correlation between good performance and good health. He realized that we couldn't afford to be sick. because the Gracies are not big, strong guys. They weigh 140, 150 pounds, all of them. On that note, if you have to fight a guy who's 250 pounds, you have to be at your peak. You can't afford to have a headache that day or a stomach ache or an ulcer. Something like that would definitely impact your performance. We all know that some days you wake up better, some days you wake up not so good. People get used to the idea of feeling good one day and bad on the other. We couldn't afford that. So Uncle Carlos, like I said, who was not a doctor, started studying the concepts and the works of doctors and nutritionists and everything he could put his hands on in terms of learning how to be healthy. And he realized, he focused his studies on the idea of food combining, based on the idea of Hippocrates that said, let your food be thy medicine and thy medicine be your food. That's the father of medicine, the guy who invented medicine, technically. And you see today, people don't do that. Oh, you have a stomach ache, take a pill. You have a heartburn, take a pill. Everything is like that. Every time you take some kind of a medicine, there's absolutely some kind of a side effect. You might not notice it now, but it gets to you eventually. It will catch up with you. If you're driving your car on the freeway, and then we have a little red little LED light start blinking on the panel, do you put a Band-Aid over it and keep driving, or you go to a mechanic and say, "What the heck is going on with the car?" Do you know what I'm saying?
That's a good analogy. That's a very good analogy.
When you have a heartburn, to take a pill to stop the heartburn, it's very easy. But what that pill does, it stops the production of acid in your body. Now, guess what? The acid is something necessary for your body. That's why the body creates that acid to digest your food. So if you stop the production of that, there's going to be some kind of a collateral effect. You might not notice it today, but eventually it will bring problems. So if you can treat yourself by eating correctly and avoid excess acidity in your system by keeping the body alkaline, the machine is not worn out. Everything helps more naturally. It's easier. It's better for you in the long run. You don't have to take pills for everything. Like a person with 50 years old is taking 5 pills on average. Crazy.
So are you saying that you are not taking, you don't take any meds at all? Like,
I don't take nothing. I take watermelon juice for dinner with my dates and cream cheese. And for this morning for breakfast, I had some fresh squeezed apple juice. 3 apples, fresh squeezed apple juice, blended with 3 bananas. I crack a fresh coconut on the ground, get the meat of the coconut, and a teaspoon of bee pollen. That was my breakfast today. I feel like $1 million.
I love it. I love it. This is why you believe that your father and your uncle lived so well into their 90s, right?
My uncle lived until he was 94 years old, and my father lived until he was 94. Now, let me tell you a story. When my dad was 94, he lived until he was 95, my father. When he was 94 and a half, 6 months before he passed away, I went to visit the old man on his ranch in Brazil. I get to the house, he gives me a kiss and says, hold on, let's go on the mat. I want to show you a new choke I'm working on. And he kicked my butt at 94 and a half. How cool is that? You know what I mean? This is it. You want to live as long as you're young and then die. And that's what the old man did. 6 months later, he passed away, had a great life, you know what I'm saying? And we threw a big party for him because he would not want us to be mourning his death. He would want us to be celebrating his life, which is what I hope to happens to me as well when the time comes.
Wow,
there's no such a thing. Freaking blast, party, everybody laughing, tell you stories about.
Is that what it is? Is that what it is? Party every single day.
Party.
We threw a party for my dad at the academy. A lot of people showed up, telling stories, laughing. It was a very positive energy, which is what he would want.
Sure. And I think it's funny if at the beginning of the episode, if you would have said that we would have talked about Jimi Hendrix and Bob Marley today, I would have said, nah, I don't think so. I'm sure there'll be a party for you too.
Listen, I mean, great stories. I love all of this. And there's no question that what your family has done for the sport and for, the community of jiu-jitsu, from the jiu-jitsu aspect and then also from the health perspective, what you just talked about is fundamental to what we do today and who we are, how we exist. So I always found very interesting all the approach of the healthy lifestyle that you and your family has been promoting for many, many, many decades. And now, especially more recently, it's more visible because of the social media and because of, how, it's much easier to present this information. So anyway, I do appreciate the fact that you're sharing this because I do believe that it impacts a lot of people out there, a lot of students. And I know a lot of my students talk about it very, very often. For the sake of time, I know you don't have a lot of time. We have only about 15 minutes left. We have this little game that we do at the end of the show. We have 5 questions for you. We didn't tell you about this. Some of them are funny, some of them are serious, but it always generates interesting conversation to the end of the show. I hope you find it entertaining as sometimes we do. So just humor us here and try to answer the questions as, first thing that comes to your mind. Gary will take a lead on this. And
so it's funny. This first one I think is kind of silly for you because it's what was it like the first time you stepped on the mat? And if I could, I'd like to change it. What was it like the first time you had a challenge match? What were you thinking?
It's probably one of my brothers at home. I don't remember. One of them kicked my butt. You know what I'm
saying? So spinning off of that, did you guys, or have you guys fought a lot between the brothers, between the siblings, like at home?
Yeah.
Was that a natural thing?
It was a natural thing.
Yeah.
There was fights, and also when there was no fights, before we went to the beach, the old men say, "Hey, let's get together on the carpet and work a couple of positions here." So we'll break a sweat in the house before we went to the beach, kind of thing. So it was just a natural thing to happen all the time. As far as stepping on the mat, Gary, to get your answer here, the very first memory I have of Jiu-Jitsu scene in my life was I was in a theater, right, sitting on the back seat of the theater somewhere with my mom, and there was a person on a stage far away, a guy dressed in white, which eventually I find out is my dad doing a demonstration or talking about it, whatever it is. And I remember my mother saying to me, "Go with Daddy," pushing me, down the aisle. And I remember being so young that the backs of the chairs, I think about closing my eyes so I can see, the back of the chairs were above my head. So as I'm walking down the aisle, tick, 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 the little thing walking down the aisle. And eventually I got to the stage. My father helps me up. I think I threw him around a couple of times. People clapping, this and that. It was him, playing around with him. But that was it. That's how far back I was. The backs of the chairs when you walk in the theater are like above my head.
So we're talking toddler. That's wonderful. That is wonderful.
That's amazing.
With all you have accomplished, what has been your most rewarding achievement?
On or off the mat?
Yeah, it doesn't, whatever you choose.
Yeah. I think that I was able to honor my dad the way he would hope.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Have you ever wanted to quit?
No, I never crossed my mind for one day, not only to quit, but I never had the doubt that I was going to succeed in making this thing happen. There was not one day when I came here with the objective of sharing Jiu-Jitsu with the world. There was not one moment that I said, well, what if it doesn't work? Never, ever crossed my mind. So I never thought about quitting because it's just part of my life. I can't, right now as we speak, I'm working on a special project, which I'll let you guys know soon enough, that is going to revolutionize the teaching of Jiu-Jitsu. It's going to change everything upside down.
Oh, wow.
That's me telling you.
Do you want to tell us any secrets?
No. Here is going to, listen, here's the curriculum.
So I'll tell you, I have the book signed by your dad, and it's in my office. I got it when they first released. Excellent. A while back.
Oh, look at that. The classic one right there. Yes.
Right there. If you're watching
I'm not going to
YouTube.
take credit. This is Thomas's. I'm in his office. But this is Thomas's book right here.
Very cool. Congrats. Anyways, that's a special piece signed by the old man indeed. And I was going to say, the project I'm doing is something on the lines of getting people aware of the old man's way of teaching, not just the teacher of Jiu-Jitsu, but the way he did it. So it's going to be exciting. I'm going to share with you. Maybe we can do this again to get us one other.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'd love to explore that, how you never had a doubt in your mind concept too. So please, if we get a second chance at this, that would be great. The fourth question is, describe your feelings when you received your black belt.
How did that work way back then?
Did you even have a black belt back then, or were you still doing the dark blue, the purple thing?
In the beginning, it was dark blue, purple thing, but then the federation was founded. And I remember being excited, about that. Yeah, black belt, it was kind of cool, that. But it wasn't something, oh my gosh, I got a black belt. I just kind of felt like, something, it was a new stage in my life. But I guess because I kind of expected eventually to get one anyways. Right. I don't think I had a choice. So receiving the black belt was a happy thing, but not a formal ceremony. No, just here, black belt, go on, life goes on.
Do you think the magnitude of the black belt was different back then, especially for you guys, since you guys grew up in the family, Jiu-Jitsu family? There's no other really words around it. And today is a more of a reward or accomplishment, a milestone, in many ways of slicing it, right? But was this different for you?
Yes, because very good point, Thomas. What happens is this: the old man always delayed the process. He was never in a hurry. You're ready, here it is. No, he was like, you're ready. Well, let me think about it. He was just like, So we try to get used to the idea of not be expecting the black belt. We just do what you got to do every day, and eventually it lands on your lap. It's like you know that you deserve it. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you give a black belt to a person and say, gosh, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this. And it's like, oh my gosh, now I'm a black belt. What do I do? In our case, the delaying of the process makes you already mentally or psychologically or emotionally be a black belt. So when it comes in, it's an easy thing to accept, I think. In my case, that's how I always felt about that. Same thing I did, with the kids. I just kind of delayed the black belt. I got my black belt at 18 years old. I've been doing this for 16 years prior to that.
Yeah.
So 16 years later, I got a black belt. Okay, great.
Pivoting off of that, do you think there was pressure, or did you feel pressure by being from Gracie family, period?
Yes, there's a pressure. Very good. There's a pressure that each one of us put in ourselves. Do you know what I'm saying? There's a certain amount of pressure. You're just a Gracie. I mean, I got to do this, I got to do that. So growing up on that environment, the different amount of pressure each one can do. I was never thinking in terms of winning a tournament. I want to win the tournament. Some Gracies are competitive. They go out, chase tournaments. They want to win the medals. That's one way to do it. Some people just push themselves in that direction. I remember being very young, and always my focus was, I want to be a teacher to change people's lives. I always want to have the gift, because I spent many, many, many years in Watford, countless hours, my father teaching class. I was a huge fan of the way he conveyed the information. I used to watch my father teach class and be mesmerized by the way he presented the technique, the way he involved the students, the way he pleased the student, the way he shared the information. The student who was completely awkward guy, didn't have the athleticism to do something, and he'd be walking out of there like a freaking feeling like $1 million. I said, I want to be able to do that. So not only I was able to do that at that level, but I was able to do it in English. So for me, my goal was that I always liked the idea of becoming an amazing teacher, and I think I'm the world's best teacher. That's how I feel.
Oh, good for you. And I think there's something fundamental behind being a phenomenal teacher and being phenomenal jiu-jitsu practitioner. Those are two different things. Not everybody can teach.
Well, I know. That's the trick. But a lot of people have black belts and they find themselves, they want a tournament. So I'm going to open up my school, and they start teaching what was given to them. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't know the basics of this stuff. There you go, the curriculum right here in your hands on that book. They just teach whatever they learn. They want a tournament, they spar, and they're good. They're very efficient. Don't take me wrong. Those guys are as tough as they can be. I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is that they're going to be the majority of people out there are not those big, heavy-duty athletes that spend hours and hours training and running and lifting weights and doing everything they want so they can be very strong and defeat everybody else on their weight class. That's not it. The majority of people that I want to address to are those guys who are the ones that don't want to get hurt, who are out of shape, who are weak, who are not confident on themselves to be able to deal with the situation. That's the guy who needs the transformation that I want to offer to them. And that's what I saw my father doing thousands of times. So my goal was always to be that kind of person, to be able to convey and impact lives that way.
Phenomenal. All right. Last question. We hope you find this one as funny as we do, but let's take a look.
Yeah. So speaking of that belt, do you wash your belt?
No. I don't.
I thought this was gonna be different. I did think it was gonna be different today.
How come?
Yeah, I thought for some reason I get the feeling from you that you would be one who did.
No, I'm not the one who does it, and I haven't washed the belt ever in my life, by the way.
Yeah,
unless we're sparring outside in the rain, and then you let it dry, but it's not. No, I don't wash my belt.
That's great.
We love it. Such a great conversation, and once again, thank you for being here. Thank you for the time. Thank you for this last hour, really talking to us and sharing the fundamental and great knowledge that was passed on to you, and now you're passing on to others. Before we depart and wrap this up, where can people find you? Talk briefly about this project that you work on right now, the Gracie Week. That it's some great information in there.
All right, thank you. So here's the deal. Two things before I forget. The audience, make sure that they know that there's such a thing. There's much more stories like these and other ones at graciemuseum.com. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, you should definitely visit graciemuseum.com. And if you have the virtual reality glasses, you can walk in as if you're there. It's an amazing experience.
I actually had the privilege being there at the old place.
Oh,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Very
before
cool.
It was right before it closed, so I was lucky. Yeah.
Excellent. Anyway, so that's one thing. As far as Gracie Week goes, it's started last night. It'll be 3 episodes of me, conversing and talking to people everywhere. And all you have to do is just check out and register at gracieweek.com, and then we'll send you the link, and you'll be able to follow the conversation. So I think it'll be kind of an interesting variety of topics too that people would enjoy very much. What else? The idea of having this new project I'm telling you about, I'm extremely excited about that.
So when is that releasing? I know you don't want to talk about it. Well, when can we expect some information about this? Is it near future or?
In the near future, yes.
Near future?
The very near future. In maybe a month and a half, 2 months, I should be ready to jump on this with you.
Okay.
So we'll maybe schedule another conversation or something like that.
I'd love to.
I am really, really excited about this. I think it's going to be, like I said, another turning point in Jiu-Jitsu history to be able to share this stuff the way I want to do it with everybody else. So exciting times coming.
Beautiful. Once again, thank you for being here. We'll include everything in the show notes. So if you're interested in checking out any of the videos of the project that you're working on, it will be right below these episodes. Check it out. And shall we wrap it up?
I guess so. So. Yeah. I just want to say real quick for our listeners, the impact that Rorion has made in what we do and in our lives cannot be underestimated. We talked to somebody who Robert Drysdale, who said there was 2 huge moments in martial arts in modern history. Sensei Kano changing Jiu-Jitsu into judo, and then UFC 1. And I think he's correct about that. It really changed the lives of. We wouldn't be here. We would not be having this conversation. So I thank you so much, and I appreciate it.
Well, having you guys do this kind of amazing work is part of what makes the whole thing worthwhile. So thank you very much for carrying on the information and sharing with the world.
Well,
thank you.
We appreciate it. Thanks for being here, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, my friends. Take care.
Peace.
All the best.
Peace.
Bye now. Take care.
Thank you for listening to ROL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.